It's in a week where we're having yet another weekend debate. For what reason, I have no idea, other than to apparently stop people from actually watching it. A sure sign that you're confident that Hillary Clinton's a good debater. And then we have the media report coming out in the past week showing that Donald Trump gets 17 times as much media coverage as Bernie Sanders, despite the fact that Donald Trump is the front runner by a large margin on the Republican side. Bernie Sanders might be in second, but every indication is that he has several times as many actual supporters, even though he's in second, which is a good sign for the election to come. And so now we have this, where he is going to be blocked from accessing his own data because one of his staffers apparently told some interns to either investigate it to prove a point about the firewall, or in my case, I believe, from my point of view, more likely to get the data, I would say. And I think most people seeing it think, wait a second.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
But this is exactly why Debbie Wasserman Schultz has to recuse herself, because I'm not at all certain that if the shoe was on the other foot, even though she claims to the contrary, that she would suspend Hillary Clinton's access to her voter information.
Inconceivable.
No, doesn't make sense.
It just, at the very least, you have to be enormously skeptical that she would do likewise to the Hillary Clinton
I got news for you. It would be the wrong thing. It would be the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
If she did it to the Clinton campaign as well. Yeah, it's too much to suspend access to their own information. It's obviously too much. That's Ben's point about the judge is going to go, come on.
Yeah, and what could the Bernie Sanders campaign possibly have been hoping to find in the Clinton campaign service? All the good classified information is in Hillary Clinton's personal email.
That's right.
We know that by now. But anyway, and the point that I made on Twitter earlier that's so frustrating to me is that, like, we're not, as a country or the DNC, we're not bothered by the millions of dollars being donated to gather up the data from the 1% from corporations that goes to Hillary Clinton, from Wall Street, so they can get the data. It's just who has access to the data later that's so important. That's not the most important form of corruption circling around this story.
You're going to run the Wasserman Schultz clip?
Yeah.
Let me read her statement first, because I think it's worse than the clip. Because the statement, to me, says it all, because she couldn't, this is a statement in her name released by the DNC. And it strikes me, as soon as I read it, 2.5 hours ago, I was like, Jesus, scale back, get an editor. Like, calm down, nobody's dead, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and as far as the public, I mean, we're all worked up about this. This story doesn't matter. I mean, voters don't care about the story. This is going to get resolved in some way. All it will do is mark a point when I suspect the comedy in the campaign probably ceases, and they will have, my hunch is, fired Bernie Sanders up the day before a debate. That's my guess is what'll happen. Here's what the statement says. Over the course of approximately 45 minutes, staffers of the Bernie Sanders campaign inappropriately accessed voter targeting data belonging to the Hillary Clinton campaign. Once the DNC became aware that the Sanders campaign had inappropriately and systematically accessed Clinton campaign data, and in doing so violated the agreement that all the presidential campaigns have signed with the DNC, as the agreement provides, we directed NGP Van, the vendor that supplies access to the database, to suspend the Sanders campaign's access to the system until the DNC is provided with a full accounting of whether or not this information was used or in any way which disposed. Like, again, there's a lot of ways to handle this. A lot of things to say. There's a world of language that is available to you, right? And they decided to make a big deal out of this. I just listened to Quentin Tarantino on Howard Stern today. And he talked about how he was going to show the Hateful Eight at the Cinerama Dome in 70 millimeter. And then Disney strong-armed ArcLight, which owns the Cinerama Dome, by saying, hey, they had a deal to run it. And then essentially Disney went to the ArcLight and go, no, you're going to run our movie the week it comes out, and then that second week too. All through the holidays, you're going to run Star Wars, and you're not going to show the Hateful Eight there. And they said, well, we'd love to, but we have a deal. And they were like, okay, then you're not getting Star Wars at any ArcLight anywhere around the country. So the ArcLight was like, well, sorry, Quentin, we got to do business, and he's not mad at the ArcLight. He's mad at Disney. And it's like this giant overreaction when you should be behaving like you have the #1 movie in the world. The Clinton campaign should be behaving like they're the #1 campaign.
Yeah, that's
and instead, they're behaving, they're allowing pettiness, which ultimately will only make them look bad, and then might have the undesired effect of having a guy who 2 debates ago said, enough about your email servers.
Yeah.
And you're asking him to step it up. So now I want to watch this debate where I didn't care before.
On Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Ben reads the statement. We're going to show you the video in a second, where she's coming out guns blazing. And it questions her bias here, because if you're neutral, as the head of the DNC is supposed to be neutral in a primary between different Democrats, you'd say, hey, listen, this is really unfortunate, but I have to take some sort of action here. It gives me no joy to do that, and I understand why the Sanders campaign is concerned, especially because some of their data is in there. But we have to take some sort of action, otherwise this can happen again. You would phrase it in that way, not they were inappropriate.
Systematic.
Okay? And they did it systematically in the time that we allowed them to do it. So what's systematic? Systematic is over and over again. They did it once. When you made the mistake of giving them access to the information.
Right. In one 10-second interval, they did it, then another 10-second interval, then a third 10-second interval.
No, that's not systematic.
They had some kind of system set up.
You're not on his side. It's obvious.
Four people, one guy took it, another guy wrote it down. That's a system.
Yeah. All right, let's go to video 3 here. Let's go to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, because I think you're going to see it for yourself.
There's not an allegation. The Sanders campaign has acknowledged that they inappropriately accessed during a brief window where the vendor that we have for our voter file during a software patch application opened the opportunity accidentally for each of the campaigns to see one another's proprietary data.
Did you learn from the vendor, or did you learn from the Sanders campaign about this breach?
We learned from the vendor. Tamron, also, I want to be clear, what we're doing is following our memorandum of understanding, our agreement that we have with each presidential campaign. They are prohibited from accessing another campaign's proprietary information, and we have the ability to suspend that campaign's access to the voter file in order to make sure that we can preserve the integrity of the voter file and ensure that there's confidence in it.
So we're going to get more from her in a second, but I don't understand why that would even be in a memorandum of understanding. Saying, like, if our vendor screws up and gives you access to information that you're not supposed to have, and you access it, we'll suspend you. Really? You decided that ahead of time?
Sounds like entrapment.
Yeah, I mean, what a weird thing to. I don't quite believe that that's the correct understanding of that memorandum. Yeah. Because how the hell would you have access unless the vendor made a massive mistake, as they did here?
Yeah.
So let's look at the second clip here from Wasserman Schultz.
Some of Bernie Sanders supporters, and quite honestly, some Democrats who are undecided, who feel that this is, again, the game being rigged against Bernie Sanders. You have this MoveOn.org petition, nearly 85,000 signatures already, and now over 80,000, believe that the game is being rigged because you have the candidate who is the front runner in the majority of the polls that you want for your party.
Tamron, I would ask any Sanders supporters or anyone who is formulating an opinion about the actions that we've taken to put the shoe on the other foot. If it were the Clinton campaign that accessed the proprietary information of the Sanders campaign, you can be darn sure, understandably, that his supporters would expect that we would take the exact same action that we are taking. At this point, I am exploring what options are available to us, but until I am fully advised by independent experts how best to approach this as quickly as possible, the only available remedy for us is to make sure that we cannot have the information manipulated, and the only way to do that is to temporarily suspend their access to the voter file.
The last thing that she said in that video and the last thing she said in the other video, neither of those make any sense. They don't apply. If they're going to be manipulating something, it's not going to be their own data in the next day. That doesn't make any sense. They looked at Hillary Clinton's data. And she said in the first video, we need to block their access to their data so that we can maintain integrity in the DNC's server system. How does blocking their access to their own data have anything to, it's not in the same solar system.
No, then you'd block Hillary. We're going to also block Hillary Clinton's access to Hillary Clinton's data.
So nobody can manipulate
until
anything.
we figure out what happened. Yeah. Nobody gets to look at anything for 36 hours. I don't know, that sounds really dumb, but no one would be, we wouldn't be talking about it 24 minutes after the show started.
Now, to say that until we can figure out that they can't access the data anymore makes no sense. Your vendor is telling you they can't access Hillary Clinton's data anymore, that the firewall breach has been shut down. And if you're worried that the firewall breach has not been shut down, then Ben and John are right. You should suspend both campaigns' access to that data, because they can both access their own data, which would be wrong.
There's no way she's not wrong.
That part of it is just simply not
also,
true.
And all of a sudden, as she said in the first part, we have the right to suspend suspend their access to the information. Then in the second clip, she's like, I'm investigating with experts what are the things I can do. So she's certain about one thing she can do, but then she has no idea what else she can do.
It's at a minimum. The fact that she was a campaign co-chair for Hillary Clinton, and she has given an enormous appearance of bias by already, even before the scandal, of packing the debates on Saturday nights. Now, look,
not having enough debates.
Look, if you're not politically savvy, meaning like you're a plumber and that's not your job, no problem. But we've been covering politics for a long, long time. No one in politics is unaware that you put a debate on a Saturday night so that no one watches it.
Yeah.
Right? That is the whole point of putting a debate on a Saturday night, so that the least amount of people watch it. And if you did it once, like, oh, golly gee, man, even though we were planning this 3-4 months in advance, we couldn't find another date for it. But if you do it several times, there was a forum on a Friday night, there was 2 debates on Saturday nights, okay?
Yeah.
See, you know what that is, Debbie? That's systematic.
Ooh.
Okay, so now you're shut down the most important thing, and this is behind the scenes, and so like people might not get it, but if you don't have access to the voter data, that is devastating for a campaign. Now you do this on top, you got to recuse yourself, because even if it isn't bias, it certainly has the appearance of bias.
Yeah.
What this is a Trumpian, Putin-like, over-the-top response.
Yes.
To a transgression that needed to have some response that results in a fine, or the DNC sends a monitor to the Sanders campaign for 72 hours to make sure they don't have the DACA, whatever, something, right? There's solutions here.
Yeah, a question at the debate, maybe.
But where was this type of behavior from Democratic leaders toward Republicans? Like they're just delighted to smack down. I'd like to see this sort of bullying. They're bullying Bernie Sanders. I would like to see it at other times.
Yeah.
No, so I'm sorry, John. I got to say, I just interviewed Jill Stein last night. We'll have that up on TYT interviews very soon for you guys. So she's the nominee for the Green Party. She was in 2012, likely to be in 2016. And this is exactly what she talks about. And this is what a lot of progressives are frustrated by. There is a corporatist Democratic Party that it's not like they're incapable of playing dirty tricks or being vicious, etc. But it is always towards progressives. It's not like when it comes to Republicans, let's go have tea, let's play golf, let's drink beers, let's compromise before they even ask for a compromise. But when it comes to progressives, in the immortal words of Rahm Emanuel, you're fucking retarded. That's what he called liberals, okay? That is the view of the Democratic Party for progressives. Now here, again, what appears to be an underhanded trick, and who do they do it to? They never do it to the Republicans. Here they are again, doing it to progressives. So you apparently know how to play hardball. Why don't you ever play it with the Republicans? Because maybe you're on the same team, which is, hey, I'm getting tons of money from donors. Who are the donors? Corporations and incredibly wealthy people. Maybe you're both representing the same people. Wow. In fact, oftentimes it is literally the same people giving to the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. So my final point is that they better be careful, because at some point this backfires. If this goes on long enough, and I don't know how long it's going to go, people's blood is going to start to boil. And they're going to get more motivated to volunteer, to donate, and it might swing people in the middle like, hey, wait, what is going on here? Why does the establishment want to keep down Bernie Sanders so much? Why are they willing to play dirty? Like, Democrats don't like people playing dirty. If Republicans did this, they'd be like, oh, savvy. Way to go, Trump. Right? But Democratic voters aren't like that. If they feel that Bernie Sanders is being treated unfairly, there's a decent chance that Democratic voters then turn towards Bernie Sanders. So at some point, people are going to have it up to here with the DNC. So they're playing with fire. Even me, look, I agree more with Bernie Sanders. I've told the positions that I think Hillary Clinton is better at, and we've tried to stick to policy as much as possible. But we don't hide it. Obviously, we lean more towards Bernie Sanders. But this has me going from leaning to being fighting mad. And so, not just for us, we're not irrelevant. I'm talking about if the voters then start to feel the same way, you think you're clever, you might not be so clever.
I was going to say, every minute that Hillary Clinton is being forced to talk about this at the debate tomorrow is a minute where she is not answering a question about the issues people care about and unnecessarily ramming references to 9/11 into them.